Everyone please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first up we have a budget workshop with the library.
Here, come in the middle. Center stage.
That's for the theater.
Oh, that's true.
That has all the cross, that has all the cross outs.
Come over here.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
We all hold hands. So. If you'll turn your skin up to the library section. Library fund. And I'll turn over to Laura Lilienfeld and our library director, Rosemary Gatzik. That way knows credential.
Heather couldn't make it, so we needed to stand in. Period.
What I've done here is I've summarized all the changes, and I can help us, jump in whenever you need to explain what I've put together here. And then in the back is the details of all the budgetary lines. So I'm not sure how you'd like to present it now, so I'll turn it over to you to see how you'd like to.
Well, we can either go through our highlights first and then the budget. We do some of our.
Would you want to hear how wonderful we are?
Sure. I was just in the library this morning.
I will not read all 3 pages of this to you, but I will try and summarize it a little bit. Library patrons who came to our adult programs were able to travel around the world. They went to the Middle East and Italy with our travel lectures. Our memoir writing program is very successful. We actually don't advertise it anymore because it was full, and it is just people love it. And any adults who wanted to learn how to read music, how to sing with proper technique, how to download books, how to use Ancestry.com more efficiently and for free at the library, and how to play contract bridge. We're all learned these skills at the library from able professionals for free. We also offered programs on demystifying Medicare. We had 2 programs about that, and we had several blood pressure testing dates as well. We co-sponsored 3 lectures.
Not related.
Not related.
But as you believe it.
Yes, you believe it. Yeah.
True.
Right, exactly. Oh my goodness, those ladies got competitive. We co-sponsored 3 lectures with the Historical Society and also began working with the Pollinator Pathway Project, hosting many of their talks, and we also have worked with our gardens to make them comply to their to what they would like to see, and so we are helping out in that way as well. We had a lot of team crafts that were joined by adults. Easter eggs, making a wreath from an upcycled old books. Upcycled is the new term for recycling, what we all used to call recycling. And teens also made accessories for their lockers, DIY cosmetics, and they even played a human version of Hungry Hungry Hippos with balls and little dollies in the program room, which was hysterical. Children enjoy coming to any one of the 5 story times that we offer a week, plus many craft programs and special events during school breaks, and of course the summer reading program. One activity that we have added to the summer reading program is to have children stop by the police department and chat with the staff about books. And the police have expanded on what we have asked them to do and actually give the children tours of the facility when appropriate. And I actually have a couple of pictures to show you that they sent us from visitors over the course of the summer.
I also want to note that they did come and read in this past
This past
fall.
year.
Yeah. And 4 of them showed up because one just would not do. So
Right.
we had the chief and 3
Three other
officers.
officers, yes, they don't seem to travel singly when they
Yeah.
come to the library. One of the highlights of our year is Touch a Truck Day, where many of the other village departments bring their nice, clean vehicles to the library parking lot, and children get to climb on them and be shown how they work. And, you know, it seems like just a fun activity, but it actually does help. 2 years ago, shortly after our truck day, a child had an asthma attack at his home and needed to go to the hospital. And when the ambulance came, his sister comforted him by pointing out it was the same ambulance they'd been in just 2 weeks before. And the ambulance driver told us that the child seemed much calmer after that. So, I mean, it's really great. I mean, they're getting to know and trust the police. They're getting to see the fire trucks, see the ambulances. It's we're working with the community, with the other village departments to try and help increase, to enhance the children's, experiences and help them grow. The library space gets used for a lot of community events. We are a polling place. Various village committees meet at the library in the Tiffany Room, as you know, the Tree Commission, Democratic Party, Theater Commission, Traffic Calming Committee, Affordable Housing Committee, IASC, Holiday Happening Committee, and on and on. We also make our facilities available for free to the school. So the school board budget information sessions are at the library. There was a bond forum last year. There was a school administration retreat and a writing workshop for the teachers. PTSA, diversity, and LSA committees have met in our Tiffany Room regularly. And other groups, we have just community groups that developed. There was a women's back to work support group that was meeting in the Tiffany Room pretty regularly. A soccer informational meetup, an artists meetup. The Westchester Revolutionary War 250 Committee has met several times at the library.
I hope they pay.
That would be me.
And various other individuals for tutoring sessions, online meetings, college interviews, etc. And we do rent space for a modest fee to various local condo boards and nonprofit organizations such as the Westchester chapter of the National Hearing Loss Association. That's basically my highlights. Now I just have a few explanations of things, which when we get to them I can hop in with.
And I just wanted to put, I like to go through the statistics every year. So for the last fiscal year, over fiscal year 2017 to 2018, we had less programs in the adult area. We had 18% less than we'd had the year before, but we still maintained our average of 15 adults per program, which I thought was really good. And our kids programs went down 4 programs, but the average number of children went from 14 to 17. And the average number of adults went from 10 to 12. So that added over 1,600 people to our programs last year, which I think is really impressive. And our young adult program is continuing to work, especially since we do have some of the adults that are coming to the craft making, and everybody seems to enjoy it.
Right.
So I was really impressed. Overall, we're up 4%, and programs are down 18. Number of programs was down 18%. So now to the fun stuff. So we sat down with Brenda and came up with a total budget of $958,882. And we have the breakdowns, which Brenda is much better at explaining the movement between the lines. But basically, we are asking, our big ask this year is to hire a full-time clerk for the library. We have, we're very lean and mean, as you know. It's very difficult to get part-time people to come that are going to work no more than 17 hours a week for about $16 an hour. We're fortunate that we do have several Irvington residents who really enjoy working at the library, and that helps. But if they decide to leave, filling their spots is becoming increasingly difficult in today's market. We did lose a part-time librarian position last year, and so Rosemary decided not to fill that at the time. And then Ann Bernstein, our longtime reference librarian, retired. She was a librarian 2, which was a higher level, and we decided we could replace her with a level 1. The only difference was basically in their supervisory skills and who they can oversee. And by doing that, we saved $22,000 on our new hire. So we saved over $42,000 by not replacing people and kind of scrambling around. But we really feel it would be a benefit to have a full-time clerk who would be somebody from our current staff.
We hope.
We hope.
So a current part-time person
Yes.
will become the full-time clerk?
Correct.
And the
And
other
clerk-
part-time people?
Would remain
Would
a
remain.
part-time.
And the projected senior clerk's responsibilities would include supervision of the part-time clerical staff, which would free up both safeguard the efficiency of the clerical service and also free up librarians for tasks for which they're more trained. Reference questions, program development, book choice, all those things for which they're currently pulled away, in part because that important interface between the clerical staff and the professional staff has been, there's only been part-time person power there.
We also have the person that we're thinking of, who's a part-time clerk, is also the one who deals with billing, and because she's there 17 hours a week, there are many times when a vendor calls and she's not there, and they wind up playing phone tag trying to resolve billing issues. And they can also attend circulation committee meetings, which are currently attended by the librarians, so that also frees up the librarians to focus on their main responsibilities. So the net for the benefits winds up being about $17,000, with the difference in the salary levels, and then adding the benefits for them. We felt that $40,000 is a very fair salary level. It is quite a bit lower than the other full-time clerks in the village. But we don't think we could pay somebody less than that in today's market.
When you say other clerks in the village,
Upstairs,
oh, here in this office.
yeah, they make substantially more.
Okay.
So we felt that was fair. The other big ask is to be realistic about our building maintenance, which is, as you know, we go over astronomically every year. We have a beautiful building with a lot of issues, and taking it from $20,000 to $30,000 a year is still not gonna stop the blood flow, but it will help staunch it a little, be a little bit more of a tourniquet. And just some of the expenses outside of the norm last year were replacing 59 sprinkler heads for the fire system. That was $12,000. We had to clean the air ducts. That was almost $11,000. We paid the difference in the security system that the village wasn't able to handle, $16,000. That went against the bond. We have a lot of problems with our HVAC system. We had to upgrade 2 of our air handler units. That was another $10,000. Our emergency lighting went out at $3,300. So it goes on and on. And we find that we're dipping into the bond. We also had just regular expenses in the interim. Since the last budget year, the program room needed to be painted for the first time in 20 years. That was another $12,000. The windows on the first floor, which are our responsibility, were in very poor shape, and that's about $35,000 to rehab those. And then, of course, we had the mold disaster, which we were very fortunate that insurance is covering 80% of it. And at the beginning, we were told they wouldn't cover any of it. So that, we were really fortunate.
What percent did you say?
80%.
80. Oh, I thought you said 8.
No,
Yeah,
80.
no, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
Maybe a little bit.
yeah.
But one of the things we had to do because of the moisture was we had to install a French drain along the wall
Footings of the east side.
east side by Dr. Weiler's driveway.
Out over the hill.
Yeah. And fortunately, Workforce Housing agreed to cover 2/3 of that as part of a shared expense. So that's, you know, we've been working well with them, which is another positive, much better than any previous management in the 10 or 15 years or however long I've been there, and certainly Chris has been there longer.
Well, that speaks well for them, but it also speaks well for the effort that you and Rosemary have put into diplomacy and
Yeah,
having detailed knowledge of what's going on, so that they know that we know
That does
what's what needs to come through.
Yeah, they've been quite receptive, so I feel very fortunate about that. So, and then our only other minor increase is for operations, because we now have an enhanced website. So that requires some additional money. The debt service for our bond is $3,200, which was a lot lower than Brenda originally thought it was going to be.
With the way the repayment was structured. So it was spread over more years, the way we had bonded in the fall. So that was, really didn't benefit the village, wasn't that well, it benefited the village and spreading it out over a longer period.
So, you know, the total of 36,000 is less than 4%, less than a 4% increase in our total budget, and we really feel that it's money well spent. It's going to serve our patrons better and maintain our beautiful building more realistically. So, do you have any questions? Or?
If I could just jump in just to explain a little bit more about what was going on with the website/publicity line. The increases in that line are due to a variety of factors. Our website maintenance has always been part of this, and so that's not changing. But last May, our site was hacked. I don't know if you saw any of that. Our website was hacked.
Oh,
Hacked, yes. And we still have not done all the cleanup. If you do a Google search for irvingtonlibrary.org and sex, you will find thousands of pages. But, you know, it says there you go, right? So, at any rate,
One behind the Google.
if you click on any of them, you get a 404 page not found page. So that is great. It used to be, they used to actually divert you to other websites. It was very, it was really awful. And it was tens of thousands of pages, and trying to work with Google to have them take that down has been just crazy. It's been a nightmare, and they're not very cooperative. So, at any rate, what we did to make sure that it would be, it was
very enterprising patrons.
Oh my gosh, it was just, I mean, it was brought to our attention by patrons, and we said, and it was horribly embarrassing until at least we could get the website. It's a WordPress website, and there was something that had not been covered by an update yet, and somebody got in and just wreaked havoc. So at any rate, we now have an additional security website security platform that we added, and that's an additional amount that we have to pay every year. But that should keep this from happening again, so it's money well spent. Our newsletter costs have gone up because our subscriptions went up over 20% last year, and so we moved into a higher rate with our newsletter provider, which is Constant Contact. I will probably, because we prepay, I will probably look into a cheaper platform at some point, but at this point we are sort of set for the next 6 months at least. And then the amount that we budget for printing is materials for our summer reading program. We distribute flyers to Dow's Lane and Main Street school students, and we have those done by Irvington Printing because she's so used to working with the schools. She knows how to divide them up and everything and get them all set so that the schools can handle them more easily. And we also Our head of youth services has created a special game board for the younger children who can't read on their own yet during the summer reading program. So they actually have this little game board that they work with that includes age-appropriate activities that foster literacy, such as identifying letters and paying attention to sounds. And how much do they love this? We had 57 children under the age of 4 participate in the summer reading program, and the previous 2 years had only had 30 children in that age range. So it's really increasing, the number of people who are using that service. So yeah, our summer reading program is just, every year is just increasing astronomically. And so that's another thing that sort of added to that increase.
So on our first page, it's on the highlight page. The first line of salaried employees increase of 21,883 represents the new hire minus the retiree's salary,
Right.
correct?
Right, that would be, right, the scheduled salary increases that you would have had
Right.
normally,
Mhm.
and the savings that carried forward from last year's budget in hiring a lower salary replacement.
From not hiring anyone for the, but I thought they were.
No, this is for the full-time, I'm
This is
sorry.
full-time only,
Right.
right, so full-time and part-time people are separated on 2 separate lines.
Right, I was gonna ask, so then you have $20,000 savings for reduction of hourly employee.
Correct, that's the
That's
part.
the employee who's then gonna be offered the full-time position?
No, that's actually the librarian position that I did not fill.
That did not get filled?
Correct.
Okay, so now I see it.
So basically, I didn't want to put in the budget because if for some reason, because it is civil service, if for some reason the person that we would like to take this position cannot take it, then I didn't want to create a budget based on her moving up from her position, because then if she didn't, I would be over budget.
Right.
So I did not include that in any of these calculations.
And the 2 lines of healthcare that,
I broke them out separately because the first one represents the amount that's needed if a second person were not hired, or the additional person were not hired. So it went up 14,000, and the reason being either an increase in the premium, and then there was an additional cost when a person was hired to replace a retiree. So we still have to continue to pay benefits into retirement.
okay. Got it.
Oh, I see.
Right, so therefore, even if you didn't hire another person, the 14,000 is a given, that's a required amount. So what I did here is I tried to put it in a way that illustrated that the savings in the salary lines really compensate for the hiring of the full-time person, and the extra cost is really the benefits associated with that.
Right.
Yeah, the benefits, the operations, building maintenance, and debt service was a relatively slight increase considering the amount of money that was borrowed in the past year. In 2019 alone, it was, I have it here, 70, it was like $260,000 in total. 170 plus 80.
It was 170, that is because we are planning on replacing our chiller, so that's why that was that part bond.
And the other was the waterproofing.
Waterproofing and other things like
Right,
that.
so it was, considering a large borrowing, it's a relatively small increase in debt service.
Any questions?
Can we safely say that the damage, the water damage is pretty much behind us? That has been mitigated and is unlikely to reappear?
Yes.
Okay, so it was costly, it was taken care of, we had good cooperation. Okay.
The one thing that we're still waiting for is we need to replace the carpeting because the carpeting has mold from the damage, and that necessitated, plus it's been over 20 years, that necessitated, we have to recarpet the entire library, which is going to cost about $83,000.
Any insurance?
Only along the edge of the south wall where the damage,
East wall.
east wall, sorry, where the damage originally occurred. Goes out how many feet?
I I think he said he was going out, it was a 4 feet, 4 feet along that wall. The insurance adjuster said would be covered.
That's a tiny percentage of the whole.
Yeah, it's a tiny percent of the whole, oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They don't cover contiguous carpet damage there.
I know there was 8%.
I have one thing I'm not clear on the hourly employees, so that still has the person that's working currently that would be replaced or not be replaced?
Well, because we're not sure, being civil service and having to deal with lists and everything, there's no, we have a person in mind, we have a person we would love to have it.
To bump up.
To bump up, but if, there's a chance that it won't happen, and if we would be really caught short. if
But
we-
would you backfill that position if she moves up?
Well, you know, I have another clerk position that I have not filled, so that would give me 2 empty clerk positions that I would probably need with that sort of I would probably need at least 12 hours a week, yeah. So it would sort of get absorbed in. This way basically covers both contingencies.
So you would backfill the
Yes,
position?
I guess that's, yeah, that's the term, okay.
So in other words, if you hire someone for 40, it really wouldn't free up would not free up any additional monies on the hourly line. Because you'd be backfilling it. I thought originally it was more money there. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not quite, I'm not.
Well, she said in case she didn't take it,
Right.
you didn't want to short the hourly line.
Right, exactly, so the hourly line should be fine.
Right. So as if I'm understanding it, that person's hourly pay is already in this larger continuing budget.
Correct.
And if that person were to move up into the full-time position, then those funds would be devoted to a new incumbent, to a new hourly.
New
person.
hourly.
So with that backfill.
Yes, right.
So the total difference between last year's budget and this year's budget is which number?
36,000 in
Okay.
total.
Any questions? Just a comment is, I love Canopy and Hoopla.
Oh, good, excellent. Yes,
They're both so great.
right.
So is that part of the shared library service?
That is part of the shared library services, yes. Yeah.
It's a way to see lots of different films.
Yeah.
You talked Brian about it last year at the meeting.
Yeah,
I remember.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I
We need
like
to
that.
have more information sessions about that, because I think people don't realize what is there, and frankly, I mean, yeah, there we go, gives you one to come in there.
It's the same thing. It's kind of like, you make a guess and start searching for things.
Mhm.
Like everything else, when there's so much available, let's spend a lot more time searching for something you want to see than watching.
Right, but I mean,
I'm
great
being a
thing
little sarcastic here, but-
no, but I mean, like Hoopla, for example, I mean, people pay for BritBox,
Yeah.
but
yeah.
with Hoopla, you can watch 5 episodes of what you would be paying for on BritBox per month for free. So, I mean, yes, you can't really just, sit there for days and binge watch, but, if you want, you can
One
actually.
Saturday.
Well, one Saturday, yeah, absolutely. And then Canopy for the rest of it.
Exactly.
Great, well, thank you very much.
Seems reasonable to me, all this.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for all that wonderful process.
Thanks to the library board for volunteering. Village with a lot of volunteers, thank you.
Enthusiastic, faithful group.
Regards to all the staff as well.
I'd say it's a great community to work in, we do often quite appreciate it.
Good. Thanks, Blair.
Yes, we do.
Thanks,
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Something we'll do.
Next up is Thea. Next.
Hello. I want you to turn to the other section of your book, where you'll find us. Oh, what? You gave us a section.
I said, I don't want to do that. Are you still other?
Thank you so much.
Section.
Wow. I feel very. I'm a little bit.
I'm thinking Palazzo.
Okay, it's after other.
It's after us.
It's after other.
At least we have one.
Hello.
Hello.
Tab.
I need a tab.
There's nothing in the tab.
Okay, you don't have the tab?
I
We have the tab, but not, oh, yes, we do, we bring one very for you. I got it. The very,
Very, very back of your book.
it's a story called After the Other.
It's got nothing like the shortest summary of all time.
This, I know.
Well, I'll start with a little bit of a summary.
Yeah.
Last year at this time when we were here, you asked us about doing a facility fee. We did. We implemented the facility fee this year. And just so you know, already that's brought in just shy of $8,000 just by that buck on sales. So I think that will continue to grow the next 3 months because we end our season in May. So I'm kind of projecting probably 10K will get added to our revenue just from that by the end of the. Pretty nice, right?
Anyone complain?
No, it's amazing. They
Nobody
did.
complains.
I know they did.
Then you have to be a little bit more.
It's on the ticket. When you buy a ticket, nobody even thinks about it. It's just there. But it added more revenue. I mean, like I said, it's going to add about
Yeah.
$10,000.
Sneaky fees.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, while we're on revenue, you do have on the page, you put the new one in there, right? That you see so far, we're at like 54, 285, 50. Some of that includes, we do a 3%, we take 3% of the box office when somebody rents from us. So every event that's in there, we take 3%. I give Brenda mid-season, here's the first part of the season, can you move this over, and then we'll do it again at the end of May. So part of that includes that. But to date, I'm projecting another 800 for the rest of the season. So that right there already puts us above the revenue we were supposed to bring in. You add in what's going to come in for the rest of the 3% of the box office. You add in that facility fee I was talking about, and I'm projecting like right around 99,000. It'll be really great if we go over it. I can finally go, oh my God, we got into 6 figures with theater revenue. But that's where we are at this point, which is about a 36% increase over the years. So
Wait, don't swallow the punchline there. 36%. That's
I
great.
know. It's great.
Great.
Part of it is that every weekend is booked. January through May, we booked every single weekend this year. This is also 2 years now we have taken some new group that came to us and they booked early on in the season for like thousands and thousands of dollars. It was the children's group,
Scipio.
the See the Wish, when they came that one time. This last year it was a Sleepy Hollow group.
Yep.
So for me, I'm excited because that's where I want us to keep going, where these people are coming in and trying out new shows before they try to take them somewhere else. So it's an out of New York City trial for them. I've already been contacted for one for next September, and I'm working out like a $10,000 deal with somebody else. So trying to get these, if we get one each year, I'm like, we're on our way to really helping us to where we want to be with that. So that's where we are with revenue. Like I said, it excites us. Part of what's been happening this year too, and I know you've all seen it, is we're undergoing this huge revitalization of, what can we do next? How do we keep raising the bar to be bigger and better, especially as we go down the road with the feasibility study of trying to create a new building. How do we keep the theater in everyone's face as much as possible? A big part of that was rebranding, as you were joking about our rebranding, but we brought in professional designers that did that for pro bono with us. And then we go to volunteers from our commission who takes up the mantle, and Lori's been creating everything you see now. I'm just putting you right out there. All the posters, if you see the digital board, that's Lori doing that in InDesign because she knew InDesign and she's like, I'll take that on. Then we've used students from Mercy College, and so that's what we've been doing the past 2 years to help us with email blast and marketing. It's gotten us along the way, but it's getting to the point where these people are saying, no, I can't keep doing this. You know, we have to bring somebody in who really understands marketing. And, you know, if we're trying to do branding that's going to make us look like BAM or one of these other big facilities, we need that next person who can take us to that level of, now what do we do that we're always on social media. When you see stuff on social media, it's me doing that in the middle of the night and putting things up. But I just try to find things like, oh, this makes sense with this show. Oh, this goes with this. And keeping things out there all the time so that we're always in people's faces and we're in their news feeds. So what Lori and I talked about was really requesting for a part-time marketing manager to handle these kinds of things, like a 10 to 15 hour a week job, like $20 an hour, which we know is not a lot of money for somebody with the caliber that we want. But we thought if we can at least come and say, well, let's start and see if we can get 15 grand in this to hire this person for going into next year, it's just going to help us up our game, and then commissioners can be commissioners and not trying to do all the other parts as well. I know you wanted to talk.
One of the, another really important reason to improve how we face the public is because we have this big project coming up. And we talk about the dollar tacking onto each one of the tickets and the 3%. The more people we can get into the seats, the more money we generate for the theater. That's one. How do we do that? By having a crack design marketing person to be able to get more out there. So that's one thing. So it's revenue for the theater. And the other is it generates more of an excitement, which we absolutely want to lay that foundation, because we're going to be asking people for their excitement and their excitement to be, you know, like show the money to support your excitement. So I mean, it all goes hand in glove, and I don't think that we can rely on volunteers to be doing a lot of the work of the theater. I really don't. And the work of the theater is, in addition to having, you know, our wonderful theater manager, that's one person, and I have a person who's a tech director. And this is a whole big theater that's generating income and, you know, booked every weekend, and we need more people there sort of supporting this.
Do you have an idea of who you can hire for $15,000?
Absolutely
Not.
not
I
yet.
was thinking because
I know.
for someone with the kind of expertise I'm hearing.
We're happy to have more.
Not to get into the weeds on it, but do you, it may be something that's more of a consultant thing as opposed to an employee thing? Just because, I mean, the employee, it just gets a little difficult in terms of the hiring process with employees and civil service and all that. So the question is could this function in an outsourced capacity in some fashion? I don't know.
I thought it may even be a better way to find somebody who has a whole sort of, you know, book of business.
Yeah, infrastructure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Makes a lot of
Just
sense.
well,
Yeah.
Because then you can just be buying into a certain amount of effort per
Yeah.
month.
that's really
Yeah,
not
exactly.
implementation. Obviously the key issue is money.
Right.
How it gets implemented will deal
No,
with.
that's,
You know.
Right.
that's actually.
One question that I have on the revenue side, so last year, the budget, 75,000. Then you said it's gonna be, you expect it to be 99 this
Right.
year? Are you confident?
Yeah.
Are you confident it's gonna be even close to that again? Like, is that something that you think was great, we had a great year, or is this gonna be kind of recurring, or is it too early to say?
It's too early to say, but I believe, look, 20,000 of this is from the facility fee and the 3%. And as what we're saying is it behooves us now to not just push the commission events. It used to be, you're renting from me, I don't care how many butts are in the seat.
Yeah.
That's not true anymore.
Yeah.
Now as a theater manager, I want every event to be full because I'm gonna get 3% of that. So I think it could happen, yes.
So, I mean, I think that's part of my, the reason I'm asking that is I think if you think you can even go from 75 to 85, which would still be conservative for this year.
To push up the numbers to, yes.
So that way, if you say, we'll increase revenue by, call it 10,000 even.
Right.
Maybe then you could make the part-time, it's funny, as a market manager, I thought you guys were going to compete with the farmer's market.
Didn't even know that.
If you can increase revenue by 10,000, maybe you can at least increase to 15 to say 20. It gives you a little more leeway, and then we offset some of it as well.
Right.
So the budget's almost unchanged, but you're kind of adding a marketing person as well.
And the narrative is you're taking the added revenues that you introduced recently and you're reinvesting.
Yeah, right.
And I think, honestly, if you get the right person, the revenue that went from 75 to 100 this year could be 125 next year.
Exactly.
And,
Right.
we can keep doing that leapfrog thing
Right.
until we get to, now we're saturated.
There's no more seats.
Well, for the first time in many years, yeah, let's
Should
move that
have
number up.
Okay, so we'll move it to 85?
Yep.
And the expenses say, where we have it, the extra 15.
Or should we make the marketing manager 20,000 since we just got 10? I mean, I don't know. If they come back and say it's 25 and we think they're going to be phenomenal, it probably makes sense because we can make it up in revenue also. So it's like, I think it's,
But they can come back to you for that.
Exactly
Right.
right.
And you make a great point about, maybe it should be a consultant.
Absolutely should be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nobody's gonna want
They'll come back and
That'd
say
be
it's
their
a
only
like
job.
job, it's gonna want benefits.
Well, and it can never be
No.
their only job, is the
Right.
thing.
No, it
We
can't.
It won't be.
And that's-
we get by with hourlies. I mean, we have our box office staff. I have my box office supervisor who's already asking, hey, I've been here this many years doing this. Can my salary get bumped up more next year?
Well, the
So
design-
I have him already asking. So
I know that they have.
someone of this caliber is going to be like, what?
The Drug Free Communities Grant, the IASC organization, they have a marketing person. It's not $15,000 or $20,000, it's considerably less than that, but they have someone under contract to do their work, which is much more limited than the type of
Through an
work.
agency, you mean, or?
Yeah, it's a consultant.
Yeah.
So I mean, and that works for them,
So Brenda, we can make those changes, plus
Sure.
10.
Are you suggest, I'm sorry.
Plus 10 on, right, 10
Were
on
you
the
suggesting
revenue.
it be the same person?
No.
It just as an
No.
example.
It needs to be a.
We're saying,
Somebody gets
20 on the
somebody has
consultant?
experience in the
Just as-
performance arts, theater, universe.
Somebody who can be more than a placeholder for, I am right now.
Well, you're part of the interview process.
Oh, my God.
But I mean, I think that's a good placeholder. Go out and talk to the consulting person. I bet you can find someone that's really good through the grapevine.
Let us know what you're finding out.
Yes.
Okay,
Keep us in the loop.
we'll do.
We'll find out right away.
And this is a good thing to be doing now when you're in the middle of starting the feasibility study.
Correct.
The more you can
That's
publicize,
actually
the
a
more
good point,
income you can
because
bring in,
I'm
the more
more and
people
more-
are gonna be inspired
That's
to
right.
Name recognition.
Micro-targeting,
and develop.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it really is true.
a different message than
Well,
somebody
and
wants.
I
the
thank
money?
all of you for seeing that too.
Yeah.
That's really great.
That's why we're here to help.
I know.
So as you,
That's
as
why
you
you
look at
all
your,
that money.
as your regular renters or users of the theater are, whatever changes have occurred, over last year or the year before, have all gone smoothly?
For the most part, yes. There's still always challenges with some. Now, I mean, one of the things is I keep going to other groups and bringing it in because we make more money. So our calendar first gets set with our arts partners. Most of those arts partners get the lower rate. So think about it. If you're an Irvington group renting, it's $800 per show. If you're coming out for a commercial rental, it's $1,600 for that, of the same event. So I try to get these, but it's great that we have these because these are our arts partners and these are our people. So did we raise rates on them? Yes. We've done a slow, gradual with Clock Tower because Clock Tower is in more than anyone because they do the rehearsals here. Nobody else does that except for them. So we slowly moved up, because I think I told you could go to the library and you're going to spend more than $60 an hour, and we were doing 30. So we went for 3 years, we went to 45 with them. We will go to 60 after this. They have one more year, and then they'll go to 60.
Then the answer will be a lot different when you
Correct.
say.
When
"Have
we
you heard
make that
anything?"
change, when you ask us, then it's
Yeah.
that'll be the rough year.
Well, it's, you're doing gradual changes and, fiscal realities and community service, all balanced
Right.
carefully. It's not an easy job, and I applaud your efforts.
So in full disclosure about the building, we're in the middle of designing, towards the end of designing the repairs to the clock tower and some of the associated leaking that you've seen.
Really?
And
Seeing in the rain every week.
so we would expect to go out to bid as long as the board funds the capital project. So I'm putting you all on the spot.
Please.
We might just take the clock tower down.
We don't.
When it's 2 days of raining, I'm sitting there, I'm praying, like, okay, here comes the leak, here it comes. And you'll walk in the theater and you'll see like 4 trash cans, strategic spots of where we know it's coming down. Or it'll be in the middle of a show and we're like, end of your show tonight, you've got to take down the site, put it back to the side of the stage, or it will be ruined again because we repaid for that several times.
Well, that's good.
So the
news.
work,
Very good news.
we're hoping for work to start over the summer and probably, continue and be done before the winter. So
Wait, is there gonna be scaffolding around?
around the clock tower, not around, not around the
12
entire
years
thing. Not as far as I know. I mean, so anyway, but
Okay,
it's
great.
a 6-month project at most.
Wow.
We
So
think.
we adjusted as per your suggestion, and
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll let you know when we find out.
Yes. That means we will start talking to people now.
No,
No, it was.
it's more about implementation.
Thank you. I need to stop going to the gym.
Yeah.
It hurts so bad right here, right now. I pulled something yesterday, so.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Take great care of him.
Thank you all.
Be careful. No
Thanks.
climbing on the clock tower.
Yeah.
No, I have to give pictures before the scaffolding goes up. I'd like to go up there and take pictures.
So real quick, we're a couple minutes ahead of schedule, so.
Sorry.
No, that's good.
Joe's here, we're good.
No, we don't get all the well, yeah. Mary Ann's on her way too.
Oh, you got the right bag.
So what,
Well, just a couple of things I wanted to hit on. So, you all saw that we received 8 proposals for the, not proposals, but qualifications for the Astor Gateway traffic study, whatever, study, planning and study. That, Connie and Janice were able to narrow that down to 4. And those 4 we have interviews set up with next week, I think. And to the extent that anyone would like to be involved, raise your hand and we'll work you in on a rotating basis. If you prefer to not be involved and let the interviews happen and then have the results come back to you and maybe get involved at that point if there's, maybe if we're down to 2 or if there's a question or, I mean, I'm throwing it out there about to what extent you want to be involved. Again, the problem is I can't have more than 2 at the interview at the same time, so.
seeing what you're seeing, what expertise or interest do you want to have reviewing this? All of us have different interest or expertise factors to play in.
And some of us have none.
Yeah, but if you got a toothbrush.
We're trying to get I mean, they haven't laid out what they would plan to do. Because we only asked them, what are your qualifications?
So this is just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
Right.
so it's
so it's pretty easy to figure out if someone's got anything there we want.
yeah.
To make it, so 2 of them were pretty obvious, like, no, I don't think so. And there were a couple of very definitely, these people seem to have done the kind of projects we have in mind. They have the qualifications, they were responsive to our requests. And then there were a couple of maybes, and going back over them and talking with Larry about them, it was pretty easy to decide which of the maybes should no longer be a maybe and which we should include. But certainly, this is,
So we're to 4 now?
we're down
So we're down to 4, and then, really at this point, the types of questions that I think we had coming out of the review were questions, maybe a little bit more detail about their experience on certain projects. you know, so one of the common things that we see, and I'm not accusing any of these particular consultants of this, but a common thing that you see is that it's often many consultants are associated with the same project, and they work in only just limited capacities on those projects, but yet,
Right.
you know, so we need to tease out a little bit of that in the interview process and get more comfortable with all that. But I think the area where we can use expertise more than right now would be the actual negotiation of the contract and better defining the scope. So if you remember, the way we put this project out, it wasn't, this is exactly what we want done, give us a proposal. It was, this is an idea of the area we'd like to study. Let's see your
These are some of the
qualifications.
things we're thinking.
But we may need to take their lead in some respects on deciding exactly what needs to be done. I mean, is it?
Right, we're not saying paint the wall blue, you know,
Right.
we
We wanna know.
want them, what color do you think we should paint it and
I
why?
don't even think you should paint the wall.
Get rid of the wall.
Why
I
not?
think you paint the new carpet.
Or hire someone to figure out whether that's the case.
So I would,
So,
I'd love more, there's a point at which, let's say we have two that seem like they're both responded well in the interviews. I certainly would like, you know,
Right,
more
and there should
input
be-
from everybody
Right,
at that point, if
it
we
would also
were
be good
willing.
to get your impression
Yeah,
of what they were
exactly.
offering.
Is it
Right,
appropriate
so if we
at some
can take
point
it
to
to the
have
next
the whole
level.
board interview somebody?
I mean, they're up there, I mean,
Right.
believe me,
I think we can leave open that possibility, especially if we can get it down to two and we can't get it any further.
Right, right, and I'm just thinking it's hard to get it down to two if we have three different combinations of two different
Yeah,
types of
right, yeah.
So I think if you guys are comfortable doing it and you want to do it,
The target
Two
being,
different
set the target, you know, to get down
if we get down to two,
Right.
or if there's obvious one, then.
Right, if we get down to like, we need a second set of interviews to decide, then it might make every kind of sense for other people to cycle in to do
Perfect.
additional interviews.
So
But
it'd
at
be
this
at
point,
least start with
I
you guys
think
running with the
speaking
ball.
for county as well as we
That's
we're
the real
fine.
estate.
Oh, yeah.
South Buckeye.
Very good. Okay, so I just wanted to throw it out there because we, just to make sure.
and that's, so there's a timeline that, you know, that
We're trying
the
to stick to
decision
it.
will be pretty soon.
Yeah, we're gonna get these interviews done by the end of the month and then go from there.
Before the clock tower scaffolding goes up.
Yeah.
Um,
No climbing on the line.
One other item, and we don't have to answer it tonight if you don't want to, but I'm just gonna lay it out there. There was a request at one point, which I think Brian communicated at some point, a request to have the board consider increasing the level of benefit for the volunteer members of the ambulance corps. Right, does that sound at all familiar?
Yes.
We looked at it, it turned out the fire department is slightly higher, so we said, why don't we,
So the request was made for it to aid in retention and, you know, a variety of things we can debate, but so the question, what we found out is that in order to enact an increase, it has to be done at a referendum, which is fine. We can handle the referendum either through the county or whatever process makes sense. But in order to do that, you have to make certain calculations about what the expected cost is for the increase in benefit. And in order to do that, we need to hire an actuary for $1,000. So
So the cost of the hiring is probably more than the cost of the benefits.
No, I don't, I think.
Certainly the cost of the referendum and the cost of the actuaries.
Yeah,
Right,
well,
the answer in the referendum is probably more than the, why don't we just?
Well, no, the referendum we can glom onto the county, so that's not a problem.
But would that,
There's no
is there a
cost
date
there.
that it has to, like would be the
yes is the answer.
It's as soon as possible, but we can,
So that would be
So
on the
it doesn't have
presidential
to-
ballot, or?
It doesn't have to go to a normal, political event, like a primary or.
No, it's just a question.
no, it
It would
would
be at the next regular.
It would be at a regular or special election, a general or a special election.
So a general
The
election
answer-
is not a primary, right?
No.
A general
So
election
it would be in like November.
We can have it for this November.
And there's no, There's no problem.
And it would affect
You'll get good
any,
service.
let me just get this straight, it would affect any of the volunteers, but currently or retroactively?
It's current and going forward, and there can be a retroactive component. We will do some calculations to price out retroactively what it is to, in other words, time that may have been served since, 2016 or something. So, pick a date, 5 years back, whatever. They'll assign a cost to that as well. And then the cost on an annual basis.
And the gap is like 1%? I mean, what's the difference between what the other, you said that there wasn't
I think
equity.
it's something like,
I don't remember.
I don't remember exactly, but something like,
It's not 20%.
it's like $35 a month versus $50 a month, something like that.
I'll pull together what it is to make them equal to the fire department. I think that was the, okay,
Yeah, I
and
just
I'll
don't
send
know
you the
what
details on that. And if I get a yay or nay, about hiring the consultant, otherwise we can't do anything.
Right.
So,
I mean, I'm leaning towards yes unless you tell me there's
Yeah,
something.
I just want to get my head around what it,
I mean, it's just,
What
one-
it
it
is.
sounds like it's one of those things that's gonna cost more to go through the process.
yeah,
then the
But this is the only
recipients.
way we can make it right, and that's what we have to do.
right.
It's like hiring,
Okay.
giving $1,000.
I don't even know how many people it is, like,
We'll get to the, we have all the financial statements.
Okay.
Last year or something, I should just look at
I
it.
already told my wife she should. Really?
Next,
All right.
Mary Ann.
She's gonna be walking in any minute,
Oh.
I'm sure, so we can just get started.
So, I'm sorry.
You want to stand back?
No, it's I'm actually gonna invite them to sit up here with us.
Yeah.
If you guys wouldn't mind, just have a seat up here, we'll all work on things.
By the way,
Hi, how are you?
I was trying to say, did you say there were?
Introductions and all.
Yeah, I don't know.
Live on the street.
I'll sit over here.
Nice to meet you. Tell me about everything you know, everybody.
Larry, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you.
How are you doing?
Hello, ladies. How you doing, Tom?
Well, yeah, appreciate you guys coming back, taking us up on our offer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you asked us to, for our input, that means a lot to
I mean, should kill a little time until Mary Ann comes, but I mean, I think what, the way I looked at this was, and it's kind of what we talked about at the last meeting, is what are we trying to accomplish with this? So I think the one thing that we weren't trying to do was kind of penalize our commercial, business owners in the town, in the village. I think one of the things, at least in my mind, was one of the biggest things was kind of a safety thing, which is kind of eliminating not just commercial vehicles, but any kind of large vehicles from some of the bad sight lines that we have. Like the last spot or two, we've all done it where you try to back out, you can't see there's a big truck.
Just started.
Oh, okay.
Good, Mary Ann.
I was talking very slowly.
Am I in the wrong spot?
No.
That's in the wrong.
We change people's identities a
Good
lot.
news is we're ahead of schedule, so it's good.
Okay, good.
And what I was just going through, Mary Ann, was what were we trying to accomplish by this?
Yeah.
And to me,
Good point.
and anyone could obviously chime in and
Talking over.
yeah, is, a lot of it's safety related where it doesn't really have to do anything with commercial vehicles, it's just large vehicles. A lot of commercial vehicles happen to be large, so I think that was maybe why. And I think some other municipalities have some cut and dry commercial vehicle laws. So I think maybe that's where it all kind of came from, which was really back in the comprehensive plan, and it was the code modernization group that kind of came up with it. So I think maybe that was all just kind of put together. But we kind of said at the last, the public meeting, let's pump the brakes to figure out what we're actually trying to accomplish, because as someone brought up, if you have a Prius with magnets on the side, that's not a commercial vehicle and it can't park anywhere, and it's not creating any danger. Where if you have a a giant SUV that's not commercial and it's parked in a bad place, it has the same issues as if it was, so.
So Brian, I know the two things, this doesn't, it sort of adjusts a little of what you said, but two things from the code modernization group. One thing was, on the side streets, oversized vehicles definitely was an issue. And, yes.
More than a safety issue.
There was, I mean.
There was a resident complaint issue.
Well, it is.
But oversized in the sense of not fitting into a parking space?
Yes,
Okay.
oversized in the sense, I think Brian's totally right that the commercial moniker got attached for not necessarily a good reason, but for an obvious reason, I guess, because it's the first thing that comes to mind. But certainly any oversized, if you try to park in, F-150, whatever the pickup truck is, it's not going to fit in most of the lines that are marked on the side streets, for instance, length or width. And the other part of it was the safety side of Main Street was vehicles either having to park up with their wheels on the sidewalk or parked with their tail end or whatever direction far enough out into the street that it was people perceiving a safety hazard of having to drive around and by driving into the oncoming lane. So it was definitely size issues that were coming to the forefront. There was a secondary issue about, I seem to recall, about commercial vehicle parking on Main Street at night or whatever it was, that however it was expressed in you sent that around, Larry, so you probably have the exact wording of it, right? Anyways, to me, I see some of these are kind of two different issues. The size and safety is one specific issue, independent of commercial or not commercial. It's just a physical reality. And the other thing that you mentioned, Brian, which I know we've talked about, but was not even part of this particular proposed law, was the corner parking. The visibility at the corner.
The visibility of coming out of a side street and not being able to see because of the.
That's definitely an issue. Can't agree with it.
Well, that's outside.
It wasn't addressed by this
Outside,
code.
not about commercial.
That's
Issue
size,
with
no.
the handicap.
Size,
ban and the
size,
handicap
size.
spot.
That's a good point too. The company says, oh, our handicap spots are there. Somebody parks a handicap van in a handicap spot. It's
It is tough, but we were talking about the exact thing, we're like, luckily there's not a lot.
Not a lot of them, no.
But yeah, it is an issue.
Well, and look, I mean, the handicap spots, when we have the proper handicap ramps or curb ramps installed on Main Street this summer, then having handicap spots at or near those corners makes a lot of sense, including, by the way, properly striped out relief areas for those handicap spots, not just throwing down a couple of blue lines.
Right.
If you look out in front of the building here, there's actually a correct ADA proper relief area for the van with the lift and.
You get a parking space, but you can't open the door.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. You're waiting for that leaves.
So, and those being located right next to those new, what'll be sidewalk ramps, it's where they belong.
Mhm.
Now, like you said,
Occasionally.
the occasional time when there is a van, I won't say it's an oversized van, but a van
Right.
that.
It is what it
has
is.
a lift in it or whatever,
Yeah.
that's life. I mean,
Right.
But many times that those spaces will be unoccupied or occupied by a regular vehicle. The other thought too was to consider, if you do have your properly sized out handicap spot, then one more space in could be considered for compact vehicle only. That's something that they need to digest probably and think about it.
They're gonna see it on the street.
And maybe see it in action but.
Because that handicap zone is typically longer than a.
No, just that it would be one extra space where there wouldn't be an oversized vehicle parked. That's it. I mean, it just pushes back.
Two in from the corner instead
Right.
of one in from the corner.
Right.
And
Definitely.
Is there an actual definition of compact?
I'm sure there is.
Does it have anything to do with height?
I doubt it.
It just has.
It probably does have a necessity, but,
Yeah.
So it's all.
Yeah, it gets a little top heavy.
they hang around.
I'm wondering if,
A slice of birthday.
can compact vehicle spaces have shorter lines to make it easier? So if someone thinks they can park in there, but their car is extended beyond a shorter parking line,
We can,
they know they can park there.
we can line it out any way we want, yeah.
And for our enforcement,
Yeah, it'll be more
officers,
obvious.
if you.
You know, while you're talking about that though, I mean, just a pet peeve of mine, and it has to do with parking, but nothing with commercial, is that we really should have a law on Main Street and signage that says your tire must touch the curb. Because so many people park 2 feet from the car, they're driving a Prius and they're actually out into the traffic. And the commercial vehicle next to it it's not bothering anybody, it's the Prius, because they're that far away from the curb. And, in a lot of towns we have diagonal parking, there is signage that says your tire must touch the curb.
Yeah, but we don't want you coming on.
You don't want to, I know, yeah, it's a catch-22, I get it. Yeah, touch the curb, just kiss the curb.
Learn it too well, learn your lesson.
You'd be surprised how many people don't pull the cars in.
No,
Anyway,
I absolutely
we'll go
understand
off
what you're saying.
I think it's, the reason we're kind of focusing on the parking at closest to the intersections is because I think that's probably the most logical way of solving that problem, as opposed to trying to legislate and remove certain size vehicles from Main Street, because you really get into, really open up a can of worms by saying vehicles of this size, and you're talking about a Tahoe just as much as you're talking about,
One of my vans.
one of your vans, yeah. Yeah. So it's, there's no difference, I mean, frankly.
The reality is, there probably should be some length restriction on Main Street, because if you park a UPS truck, for instance, on a diagonal spot, you're literally taking up a lane of traffic.
That's longer than 20 feet.
Right, that's what I'm saying, so it would be
It
something.
doesn't mean they don't do it, I'm just.
They just park in the middle of the street.
Right, no, the current regulations are 20 feet.
Is it?
Yeah.
Which is what the line should be.
And the lines are 21 feet long.
21.
Yeah.
It's been 20 years since I was a cop, so I forgot a lot.
My van fits in all the spots on the street here.
Yeah, I actually measured one of my vans before I came down tonight.
What was it?
It was 18 feet.
My van's just
Yeah,
under.
bumper to bumper.
Yeah, it's like 19.6.
There actually is a provision that no vehicle may be parked more than 12 inches from the.
Yeah, that's a state law, but
No, it's in the code.
it's also a state law, but nobody enforces it. You know, I used to write that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that bothers me. Yeah. I know, yeah.
Enforcement, you have a lot of time.
Yeah, there you go. I'll take Jimmy's shot.
It'll just be the front of the car.
The back. I gotta tell you, I wouldn't be as nice a guy as I was.
May be parked more than.
I really don't have as much patience as I used to.
I think anybody
If you got a ticket from me when I was a cop, it's probably collector's.
I remember we read
For
it
for real.
where it said the vehicle must be within the space of the lines.
Yeah.
That's part of the law, so if the line goes 20 feet,
Right.
that's
Where
as far
lines
as
are
it's
other markings, if the line
over the line.
to
No vehicle shall-
indicate parking spaces, no vehicle shall be parked across any line of marking, or in such position so that the vehicle shall not be entirely within the area designated or indicated by the line. So the stuff's there.
Yes.
Right, but
The problem is, if you think about the geometry of it, if you have a 20-foot long vehicle, which meets our code, right?
19.6.
And they pull into a spot that is lined out at 21 feet.
Yeah.
The uphill side of the vehicle is going to be 20 feet out into the road, which is okay. But the downhill side, the front tire of the downhill side is not going to be touching the curb,
Because you're angled.
right? There's your
Yeah.
angle.
Yeah, right.
And so that's probably at least a foot or two off the curb with the car angled the way it is. So,
But if the angle's right, that brings the vehicle in to the traffic.
I wouldn't think it would be much more than a foot, and we have a 21-foot line, so that would still keep the far end of a 20-foot vehicle in our line.
barely.
But it makes it hard for
It
the
makes the
car
appearance
that's
of being
parked
oversized.
downhill from that car,
Yeah.
or the person who's crossing downhill from that.
Right. For the ones that are right at that limit, yes.
Go as close.
I mean, you have the solution, and I'm not saying it would be changed, but, if the angles of the spaces were made a little bit less sharp, or,
Which they used to be.
They used to be.
I know,
Yeah.
and
Better.
and they were changed to fit more spaces, yes.
Yeah, to pick up one space per
Back
block.
in the
Terry Masterson. did that.
early 90s, yeah, so, but if they were, if the angle was this way, it wouldn't stick out as much, you'd have less parking.
And you used to be able to see the car coming down when
Yeah.
it was angled like that.
Right.
Yeah, the saving grace is most cars have a camera now, and you can actually see it.
Yeah, that's the only way you can see it.
Before that, it was very difficult.
Oh, yeah, no, you
I used to jump out, jump back in.
I
I used to run out,
still
nothing's
alive,
coming, and I'd go.
But in
That's when
thinking
traffic
about,
was slow enough that you could do that.
But in thinking about all of this, I think the part that I started realizing, and I'm not sure where you all are, is that the problem on Main Street and the intersections and sticking out into Main Street is not necessarily a legislative problem. I'm not sure you can fix it with legislation. There's basic things you might look at to tweak, but I'm not sure that it's a legislative problem. I think it's a physical problem. You know what I mean? And
Design problem.
yeah, you know what I mean. So, just my opinion.
I mean, it's almost
But
like.
it's also, it sounds like it's also a bit of an enforcement issue,
It can be,
supporting the current code.
it can be, but the problem is the perfect example of 19'6" pulling into one of those parking spaces. That 19'6" is going to be pushing out to the point where you have the perception that you're boxed in when you're driving down Main Street, and that's a legal parking job in a legal parking spot that fits, and it's the geometry of it.
What about if we were to flatten the angle out a bit, lose the space? You know, that creates, it's a little bit better. I mean, it would pull the rear of that truck or van in a bit.
Right.
It's almost like, too, you can almost make the sidewalks, luckily we have pretty wide sidewalks, if you almost took like 6 inches off the.
Well, you jog the
center bar.
sidewalk.
Yeah.
You jog the sidewalk.
Yeah, zigzag.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a big expense, but.
The lines before I talk.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
maybe
and only on a
maybe,
block or two, by the way.
Maybe you only have it like that or something, like, you know, so that way that part is, you know, in the middle, but again,
It's a lot of curbstone.
it is.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of work.
But it's like when we're redoing them, you can, instead of redoing, you know.
Redone in
So,
decades.
if we decided to revert to, more perpendicular as it
No,
was,
less perpendicular.
so the car comes in more
She's
straight,
right.
Yes.
less of an angle.
Okay.
If the lines are not as angled like that and more like this, well, you said that we lose spots.
I always think out further, if it was a true 90.
No, I think you're saying less angle from the yellow, from the middle of the road, like more this way.
Which angle you're looking at.
Yeah.
Right.
Saying it's
90
right now
degree
it's
angle.
60, you're saying 75, or whatever.
So-
Depends which
So
angle.
there's an angle like this now.
Not as sharp.
Right,
So if it that's what I just said, less sharp.
Right, less sharp,
Or
yeah.
people say,
So you'd move the lines up Main Street.
So
The end of the line would.
it's
Well,
further more straight down.
No.
I don't know about.
Instead of, if the lines are facing this way currently, I'm suggesting that they be made less. Yes,
Up the hill.
yes.
Right, so you push the line up the hill.
So whatever that term is, I don't know if it's
Less,
obtuse.
that's what I'm
I
saying.
think we're saying the same thing.
We are, but one person's talking down the hill.
And it'll help from the people going up the hill to try to get into that spot and mess everything up.
Yeah, right, yeah, you gotta love those people.
And if you angle them less, you have fewer spots.
Draw a picture, Larry.
Get the right curve.
We're angling more.
Curve and draw the angle, look at the current lines.
Alright.
So Terry's very angry.
I know, really.
Okay.
That's
I'm
crazy.
gonna do it, I'm gonna overdo it.
This is a job for Mark.
Oh, wow, that's
That's
what you're talking about.
Yes, it's right now. Which is,
Top is current, bottom is exaggerated.
Yeah.
and the bottom is what you, bottom is what you want.
Yes,
And would that lose parking spaces in total? It
yes,
would.
yes.
Because one of the other things that's pretty obvious, we're talking about all the angle parking on the,
See what he means?
on
This
the
is what he's
other side of
suggesting.
the street where it's, where you pull in parking, it doesn't matter.
No.
You know, then you're not, the commercial
south side.
vehicles, the big vehicles are not affecting visibility, they're not protruding
Except
out
at the
into
corners.
traffic. I'm sorry.
Which is where we have the loading zone.
Corners.
Except, well, yeah,
Right.
we do, this is one, but
Ironic, right?
and I'm wondering if there's a way to juggle it a little bit so that oversized commercial vehicles have a better shot or directed more to the other side of Main Street. It's probably impossible to do, but it would certainly solve a little bit of this.
Other than deliveries during the day, is it really a big issue with the commercial vehicles on Main Street? I mean, most of us, we're out working.
Well, sorry, the one point about directing them to the other side is that you have an observation from someone who has a business on that side of the road, that having something parallel in front of, you know, the storefront for an extended period of time is a problem. I'm not saying that they can't park there, but it's just, if you're.
Right, and that letter also refers
As
to height of,
usual.
I know.
height of vehicles in addition to
To height,
length of
yes,
vehicles.
height, that's why I brought up height.
But I mean, you're always gonna have deliveries. I mean, a UPS guy pulls up, you're gonna give him a ticket. I mean, it's, you
It
know.
sounded like it was
it's-
more
yeah.
long-term,
But they're gonna be
rather than
non-enforced.
just.
And but most, like, you know, any of us that are tradespeople, if our truck's parked on Main Street, either someone's running in for a sandwich, or we're actually doing a physical job.
How about on the weekend?
On the, you know, on the weekends, you know, my vehicles are parked on the side street, or my business is, or down the hill.
Because
Well,
you know, I can
yours
see a
are-
business.
yours are on Main Street
you
for
know, with someone parked there.
weekends sometimes and
Yeah.
extended
Friday
times.
afternoons,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that might affect Brendan.
Rec center, that's not conscientiously.
Yeah, I know, I think you're moving away from the corner
Well, no,
recently.
that's been a few years. I think Brian and I talked about that a few years ago. I don't want to park in front of any restaurants or
Which is
places
your
like the
business?
Rallies.
Consolidated.
That
Okay.
consolidated at the time where people were pulling in and pulling out quickly. They, you know, Kenny didn't want those spaces taken up. Danny doesn't want those spaces taken up. So I'm trying to be conscientious about where we're parking the vehicles. And because of all this, I'm actually going to be getting rid of the vans, so it's only going to be down to 2 vans.
Two.
So, yeah, I mean, we don't want to, you know, upset people in the village, and clearly they know whose van, who owns the van. It's a billboard with 4 wheel, right? So this is where we conduct business. We don't want to upset people.
I mean, I think we're all cognizant of it and try and be, you know, neighborly. I mean, I've had guys, you know, my neighbors up at the shop actually say, hey, you know, we're having people over this weekend, we're having a barbecue, could you not park by us? No problem. You know, and you know, we work it out amongst ourselves, and it's, you know, at least up where we are, it's never ever been an issue.
And I've actually, I don't think in my 10 years as mayor, 9 years as mayor, that I've had any complaints about commercial vehicles parked anywhere, to be honest.
Yeah.
I've heard, you know, generic parking things, and
Yeah, I mean,
mostly it's large vehicles and large vehicles on the sidewalk.
right, yeah.
But it hasn't been, they would have said it was consolidated or it
Right.
was Greenfield or whatever, and we haven't gotten that, so.
So the vehicles on the side streets, Mary Ann, the ones, when Mark led off with that there's some vehicles that don't fit either widthwise or lengthwise in some existing parking spaces on the side streets, that already would fall under a requirement that they have to be parked.
Yeah, right, yeah, right, parked over lines.
I don't know what vehicle wouldn't be the width, though. All our vans are pretty much the width.
I mean, I must say on Dearman Street though, we do park over the lines because the lines are not up to code. They altered the lines to fit the fire hydrant, so some spaces are like 15 feet.
Well, you know, I actually drove on North German just now.
Right, and there's 9 available parking spaces.
I know, it's like.
Right, I took a picture.
There's so much space there.
Yeah,
But
there's
how
9
many,
available parking
there's
spaces.
only one of your trucks.
Yeah.
How many trucks do you have?
We have, I don't know, 8 maybe? But most of our guys take them home. You know, and we park a couple down on Buckhouse Street by the highway department. And, you know, we have guys on call. One of our guys lives on Main Street, so a lot of times you see a truck by the middle school there. Billy lives in the building where the burger place is. And when Billy's on call, he takes a truck home. Sometimes he goes out at 2 o'clock in the morning. And, I mean, most of the time, we have maybe 2 trucks on the street. And like I said, there's 9 spaces available, and there's actually another 20 on the 2 sides of Main Street from Aqueduct Lane to Broadway. There's another 20 spaces. So there's 29 spaces available. You know, it's certainly not an issue of we're taking available parking from residents. That's what, at least up in that area. I understand downtown's a little harder. You have the theater upstairs, you have restaurants or whatever, but at the same time, you know, I feel that as tradesmen, we have as much right to park as the restaurant because are you going to favor the restaurants over the tradesmen? I mean, you know, Irvington is a unique community. We don't have an industrial district when it comes down to it. I mean, we have Bridge Street, which is one owner. And other than that, there's no like commercial business area that you have in Tarrytown and Dobbs Ferry and other villages. It just doesn't exist. So, you know, we have to try and coexist in the downtown area, which you know, when I was growing up, here was the business district. We had, you know, lumber yards and Weyerhaeuser and Lord and Burnham's and, you know, I mean, there's a million companies, but those companies slowly left and those businesses were converted to parkland and/or, you know, the River House was where the lumber yard was, and, you know, so now it's residents, so that, you know, we're forcing the blue collar worker out of the blue collar business, out of the community. And, you know, I think it's important that we take that into consideration when we look at this. I mean, like I said at the meeting, if the way the law was written, you know, I would have to, you know, sell my building and move out of town. It was just absolutely impossible, I mean, the way it was written. So
let me just make a suggestion. So let's use an example of your business having 8 vehicles and no one takes them home. They all need to be parked in the Main Street area. I think most of the people sitting at this table would find that to be a problem if they were all parked in a concentrated way on Main Street, as if it's your
it could be,
as
yes.
if it's your personal parking lot. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm exaggerating, but so it's, which I know it's not, but
Right.
So it seems to me that that there may be a way to use. Marianne and I were talking about this during the day. There may be a way to use your residential parking permits to control, to limit that possibility from happening, you know? So you're not, and at the same time, start addressing the location of where they can park to try to address the other safety issue. So there should be no reason why a business, regardless of tradesmen or whoever we like or don't like, there should be no reason why a business would come into town and expect to be able to park a fleet of vehicles on Main Street, right?
We can't.
Right.
So let's think about, maybe we can think about a way, I don't know, we'll solve it tonight, but think about a way of using the residential parking permit system to limit that, so that they'd be issued permits up to a certain point. We'll figure out what that is. And
Are permits required now for?
Well, right now, you can get a permit for a commercial vehicle as long as it's the right, resident parking permit for a commercial vehicle, although it's the right size.
but
Yeah,
that doesn't
it's
apply
a-
to Main Street. Main Street itself.
Does it accommodate the resident, or does it accommodate the business?
The
The
property
permit,
owner
the
or
permit.
I think it's I forget, you know, I looked at it, let me.
Because with resident permit.
I think you have
I
to
think
be
it
a
has to
resident
be-
of the area.
yeah.
So it's a
So-
resident permit.
Yeah,
Or
but-
your,
but-
or your business, wait a minute.
Business could be a resident.
Well, but I think we have some latitude in restructuring whatever existing language
Right,
is there.
but right now, it's
Within
an
limits.
area resident, and an area resident is the owner, or owners, or tenants of a
Tenant or
residential
tenant.
dwelling.
So we'll put a residential dwelling unit.
Yeah,
so-
residential dwelling,
but-
But yeah, that can be changed,
That
yeah.
could, it could be changed, is my point.
I think because we were, we talked about this, Larry, too, like, we always said, well, what if Dr. Mack suddenly had 50 technicians, they all had Dr. Mack cars? It'd be a problem, but I mean, I feel like we were solving for something that's not a problem yet, and we used a sledgehammer to try to do it,
So,
so.
I mean, in reality, we have that now at the real estate offices, except it's their own personal cars.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Yeah, it's, you know.
Because the restaurant or the real estate, they have
Yeah.
10 people,
problem.
but they're just not identifying themselves.
Right, because their trucks are,
Right, that's a good
their vehicles are.
Right, they don't have,
Right,
But
well,
they're
they have
taking
owners
those
could have
spots.
20 people in their
Yeah,
office. on any
We're
given
easy
day.
targets.
Spoken about that many times, the number of employees
Right,
that are in restaurants.
But they just have
Hi.
to see your.
so this
Yeah,
is
this is
really
just
just
a
a
problem.
confluence
It's that
of
we're easy to spot.
identifiable business with larger than,
But we're all fitting in the same spot.
No, I know,
Right.
right.
no, I hear you.
Yeah, but it's something that we can identify. I mean, I don't think we can limit the number of, Chevy Tahoe permits we give out. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's kind of hard to start drawing those lines, of what's an oversized SUV, but I think that, there could be a way of creating a limit, whatever that limit is. I don't know if it's
I mean, the
3 vehicles
other
or
thought is,
whatever it is,
what
but.
about some of the municipal lots?
I was just
That are
gonna.
We
underutilized?
talked about that.
Yeah.
They're
The Aqueduct lot
available.
is kind of obvious.
Yeah, we were waiting, for January to pass. I have to go back and see where we are in the renewals, but we were hopeful that the demand for the Aqueduct parking permits was gonna be less this year because people could now legally park on the street, overnight in front of their homes. And the thought was, maybe we could segment off and restripe, you know, I don't know, half a dozen spaces down at the end of the Aqueduct lot with appropriate turnaround space, and, you know, we'd have to really take a look at it. And for commercial vehicles,
Yeah, that makes a lot of
might be a
sense.
possibility, you know. I mean,
It's all both.
it doesn't mean they'll all have to be parked there, but at least it would take some demand, you know, away from the public streets.
What about the Sunnyside Lane parking lot? Isn't that like totally underused?
Yeah, sure. You said.
Sunnyside Lane, there's a municipal lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
You mean where
It's
it
used, but
cuts
not-
back in, but there's two multifamily homes?
yeah, and then the village owns that parking lot.
Yes.
And so, which, that parking lot was supposed to be for the park, that it's completely overgrown, that you, unless you want to get Lyme disease, you wouldn't go in there.
There's no parking area.
So,
It's lightly used.
it's lightly used, so what I'm saying is, you know, you can.
Between those two, you could have.
Because if you make the tag, you know, my guy could pull in the morning and park his car and take the truck and flip the tag back and forth. Just a thought, you know, and
That's great.
you know.
Right now, are there
That would not give you
permits for
extra
that?
permits, you're just able to transfer.
Right. You're just transferring it from his personal vehicle to the truck and whatever.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is, it'd be nice if there was a light up there, just, you know, some of our vehicles have tens of thousands of dollars of tools in them. You know, sometimes it could be a sitting duck,
A
but,
light
you know.
camera, maybe.
Yeah, even a, you know, today, you know, the camera's worth
A
a
couple of
Yeah.
well-trained coyotes.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Would that-
But
would
between
that
those
work
two,
for,
you had 6 there and 6 there or something, you know, it's 12.
right,
But, you know, it's just a thought, that's right, I know that's an underused lot, I mean,
right.
you know, they used it while they were doing the.
You only have
was
your own,
staging
so
it.
you're, it's
I only
not,
got one vehicle.
but would that,
Well,
you
two-
know
one
what
down
I
the
was
hill.
talking about on East Sunnyside Lane?
Sure.
Yeah, would
I
that
think
be
that's a great idea. Yeah.
something that would be appealing?
Yeah.
And what about the aqueduct, you know, maybe the part that faces the concrete?
Does that lot have lighting?
That's what we were just saying with.
I don't-
I don't know about the Sunnyside lot.
Yeah, I don't know about the Sunnyside
I would say
lot.
no, but
Yeah,
if we could.
Well, there has to be light.
that's what I was saying, because it's, you
I
know,
was thinking,
yeah,
I got a couple LEDs in the shop.
That's
For the power I
We
provide.
have,
lights.
we
We'll give you
have
free for
dark
3
skies
years.
thing. But I,
So, and then maybe that in a combination of, I mean, I don't know if that's gonna eliminate all of your parking on Main Street of these
no,
vehicles.
no, it's not gonna,
But
it solves some of the local guys' problem, but you're still gonna have.
Yeah, but it could allow you to set, if you were to do some sort of residential parking permit thing and use that
Right.
system, that number wouldn't have to be all that high. It could be 2 per business or, you know, something like that, you're not,
Right,
and,
like I said, right now on Dearman Street, we don't have a parking issue. Since Neil left, we used to when Neil was there. Neil, and you talk about a business that takes up parking space, you know, Neil, he would move one car and put the other car there. It was, the spaces were never available.
Yeah.
Just see what it's like down where it is now.
Yeah, I'm sure it is,
It's insane.
you know, but,
It's a one-way street,
It's,
it's 2 ways, yeah.
so now that Neil's not there, I mean, there's really, you know, there's not really not an issue there.
So it almost seems like we have almost all the laws we need already on the books.
Yeah, it's-
We could maybe tweak them with the residential permit, but, and then maybe open up a few lots.
so the differentiation of your example of somebody coming in with a fleet is that that would not be a resident. That would be somebody who has a business somewhere else? Is that where you use that?
No, I'm suggesting that someone who's renting
Right.
on Main Street and
Oh, I
happens to
see.
have a lot of vehicles, like Joe does.
Yeah.
He just doesn't have the parking here, which is
Right.
great, but if he did,
But a resident, and as you read it, it can be a tenant who can get permits. Yeah, so you will, it's not an ownership of the buildings that you're.
No, it would be a
No,
tenant,
and-
sure.
Right, and neither,
Right.
with Consolidated, I don't think you own that building, do you? Maybe you do.
No,
Do you?
no, I don't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just rent there.
Okay. So I was just trying to think of a, you know, kind of an outside business that, I don't know why they would want to park in Irvington, but.
I understand Larry's point, it could be a business that comes in the future that.
yeah, no, I
you
don't.
know, we haven't thought
Larger,
of yet.
yeah.
Right, so there would be limits placed, and then, but at the same time, there's limits. There's also supplemental options if we can get the parking lot thing
Right.
working.
Right, that-
But you can't put one without the other.
you could- I would think you could also control those limits with availability. I mean, if a business went into an area where there's, no one ever parks there, who cares if they have 8 vehicles? No one's ever there anyway. You know, but if it's in an area where it's a problem. No, well, you know, I mean, Upper Main Street is not, parts of Main Street is, there's, you know, they're pretty quiet. Yeah, yeah.
In front of the site.
You know?
Down the street.
Yeah, Brandon, he's right down the.
Well, he's right in the heart of the village.
That's why he's the poster child.
Yeah.
He knows it.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's quite obvious. You know, on the same hand, we don't want to lose businesses like his or mine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I think we have some stuff to, on the way forward, keep you guys in the loop.
Thanks for the input.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
You guys coming out here.
But we always put something out there is just start the conversation. And we
Just
never-
scared the hell out of all of us, I'll tell you that.
Just get it on our side.
No, this is really appreciated.
I realize that you guys don't have to do this, and so it's appreciated.
It's
From our standpoint.
very much a dialogue. This is the way it works.
Thank
If we don't start it, you know,
Right.
So many times the kind of comments you get in public hearings, it's like, really? But when you guys stood up, it was like, oh shit. We overlooked something.
We appreciate that. You know, when I first read it, it was, you know, the way it was written, it was like, I'm out of here, what can I do? You know.
so many people have that reaction to first drafts of legislation. And the next meeting, we have 50 people say, are you people crazy?
Yeah.
But this is how we get to something that works reasonably.
Unintended consequences.
Pendulum swings, right?
Yeah, you don't want to over it.
You have to have a commercial vehicle to park on Main Street.
It's like, you
Got
know,
a commercial place.
it's like some people drive onto the sidewalk and some people don't even come close to
So
the curb.
An organization called Irvington Booster, which is.
All right,
Okay.
so.
Let you guys move on to your next one. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
I'll get back to you. I'll edit the study section.
Yeah.
See you guys. Thank you. Thanks for taking your time.
Thanks. So, right, so you want to adjourn here? And
I'll make a motion to adjourn if I get a second. All in favor?
Fine.